So now let's finish up with what is known as, so number 6, let's finish up with the loose or firm grip. So the loose or firm grip. So I'm now going to use my rod at station number 5. So I'm now going to demonstrate for you guys what the loose grip is and then compare it with the firm grip. So this here, as you can see, this here is the loose grip. As you can see, this is the loose grip. As you can see, my rod is in a straight horizontal plane, right? So this here is a loose grip, this here. So if I can just turn to you to show you what's happening at my wrist, that's what is happening at my wrist. Let's show you at the back. This is what is happening at this side, right? So if I change it, if I change from the loose grip to the firm grip, as you can see, when I'm trying to make the firm grip, the rod, it tilts a bit. It tilts from the horizontal straight position to a more tilted position, right? And if you can check out what's happening specifically here at what is known as the metacarpal joints of the 4th and 5th digits, if you can see what's happening on this lateral side, which I'm going to explain shortly for you guys, this side is actually bending. It bends more as compared to this side. So check out this side, compare it to what's happening at this side. This side is bending actually to cause this rod to tilt from a more horizontal positioning to a tilted position when you are carrying out the firm grip. So this is the firm grip, and then this here is the loose grip. So if I try to change from the loose grip to the firm grip, as you can see, this side here bends. It bends more as compared to this side. So that's the difference between the loose grip and the firm grip. In the loose grip, you have your rod remaining in a horizontal straight plane, but when you are carrying out the firm grip, you have tilting of that rod. So after demonstration, now let me explain why you have more bending on this side as compared to this side. So now I'm going to explain to you guys why we had that bend towards the medial side as compared to the lateral side. So what I want you guys to know is that we have what is known as the radiocarpal joint or the wrist joint, which is between, so let me just write it down for you guys. We have the radiocarpal joint or the wrist joint. So the wrist joint, it is the joint the wrist joint or the radiocarpal joint. It is the joint between the distal end of the radius and the proximal carpal bones, except the pisiform bone. Let me just say that again. It is the joint between the distal end of the radius and the proximal carpal bones, except the pisiform bone, because the pisiform bone is actually found on top of the triquetrum. So the scaphoid, lunate, and the triquetrum and the distal end of the radius bone form what is known as the radiocarpal joint. But the radiocarpal joint is actually different from what is known as the carpal metacarpal joint. So the carpal metacarpal joint, unlike the radiocarpal joint, it is the joint between the distal row carpal bones and the metacarpals. So as I said, it is the joint between the distal row carpal bones and the metacarpals, right? So that is the carpal metacarpal joint, which is different from the radiocarpal joint in that the radiocarpal joint or the wrist joint, it is the joint between the distal end of the radius and the proximal row carpal bones, except the pisiform bone. So so after knowing that the carpal metacarpal joint is it's the joint between the distal row carpal bones and the metacarpals, what you have to know again is that we have, obviously now it just means that we have 5 carpal metacarpal joints, right? We have a couple metacarpal joint between the first metacarpal and the distal couple bones. We have another, the second metacarpal forming another metacarpal joint here, the third, fourth, and then fifth, right? So what you have to know is that the second and third couple metacarpal joints, they are rigid and stable. These two, the second and third couple metacarpal joints, they are rigid or stable. But the fourth and fifth couple metacarpal joints, they are what are known as saddle joints. And what do I mean by a saddle joint? So this is how a saddle joint is. Let me just draw it down for you guys. So this is how a saddle joint is. It's something like this. So it is something like this, right? Or if I can demonstrate it for you guys, it is like this, right? So you have one articulation down, and then you have another articulation on top like this. So this saddle joint, it moves in this kind of direction. It can move this side or to this side in this fashion here, right? So it means that this saddle joint, it can be flexed as well as extended, and it can also actually move in this plane here like this, sideways, right, to this direction as well as this direction here. So being that the fourth and fifth couple metacarpal joints, they are actually saddle joints, that's why when we're having the firm grip, we have this bend to this side in comparison to what's happening this side. I would say this side, it is stable and rigid as compared to this side, which is a saddle joint, so it flexes, as you can see. That's why you have this tilt of the rod. So that is the loose and firm grip. Now we are finally done with all our different stations, right? And now we are finally done with the functional positions of the hand. I hope it was clear. It was actually interesting for me because I tried out a different way of presenting through making this faceless video. So I hope it was clear for you guys. So before we end this video, I want to just show you something. So I've always asked myself this question concerning the hand. I've always asked myself, what are these lines for? These lines that I see on the palmar surface of my hand, these lines here. So let me just use this side. What are these lines for? Because obviously there is nothing that was placed on our bodies for no reason, right? So I just wanted to share with you guys that these different lines and their functions. So concerning these different lines, we have lines. So these lines in the anatomical terms, they actually referred to as flexion creases. And what are flexion creases? So flexion creases, they are areas on the palmar surface of the hand where you have skin firmly bound to the deep fascia. So there are areas on the palmar surface of the hand where you have skin firmly bound to deep fascia. So, and actually, as you're going to see, they depend when you flex different areas on the palmar surface of the hand, as I'm going to show you guys. So they depend when you have flexion at different areas on your hand. So we have creases that are found on your digits, which are known as the transverse digital creases or transverse digital flexion creases. We have palmar transverse creases as well as longitudinal palmar flexion creases, right? We also have wrist creases. These lines here that you can see on my wrist, they're actually three with this one here. Yeah. So now let's begin with the transverse palmar flexion creases. So the transverse palmar flexion creases are actually two. We have this one here, which is known as this last one here. It is the distal transverse palmar flexion crease. And what I mean by crease, I mean crease like this. Crease. This is the spelling of crease. So they are flexion creases, right? They're like this. So we have the distal transverse flexion crease, the distal palmar transverse flexion crease, and then you have a proximal palmar transverse flexion crease. So these flexion creases, as we say, they depend when you have flexion at different parts of the hand. So when you try to flex the MCP joint, when you try to flex your MCP joint, you actually see that these these transverse palmar flexion creases, they actually deepen, right? When you try to flex this MCP joint, they will, as you can see, when you try to flex the MCP joint, this MCP joint, you'll see them deepening. And actually, they deepen to ease folding of the hand, like when you're making a fist, right? So they will deepen to ease your ability to make this fist. Because imagine if you didn't have this flexion crease and your hand was just flat. Obviously, when you try to bend your hand to make a fist, obviously you have a difficulty in doing that. So if you didn't have these palmar creases, you obviously have a difficulty in folding this palmar surface of your hand in examples of making a fist, right? So if you're trying to make a fist, those palmar creases, they actually deepen to ease your ability to make this fist, right? So so that's about the transverse palmar flexion creases. So now let's look at this. We have these two longitudinal palmar flexion creases. We have these two here. And even when I'm looking at this side, I have this, and this. Yeah. So these are what are known as longitudinal palmar flexion creases. So what happens that for them, they deepen when you have opposition of the thumb. So when you're trying to oppose the thumb, you will see them deepen. That's when they deepen. As you can see, this longitudinal palmar flexion crease, it will deepen to increase the depth of cupping or making the concavity on the palmar surface of the hand. Let me say when you're trying to hold. If you're trying to hold this cup on the palmar surface of the hand, you need to make that concavity. That concavity is made possible by that increased depth or that increased concavity on the palmar surface of the hand. So you're trying to cup your hand, and because of that longitudinal transverse crease, which deepens when you are trying to make that concavity, it eases you being able to hold things like tennis balls, or if you're trying to hold a mouse, or things that basically fit at the palmar surface of your hand. So that's about the longitudinal palmar flexion creases. So now let's look at. So you also have these transverse digital flexion creases. So these transverse digital flexion creases, we have a proximal, middle, and then a distal. So actually, this proximal transverse digital crease, these creases here, these proximal transverse digital creases, they actually found approximately 2 centimeters above. They found 2 centimeters, as you can see, approximately 2 centimeters above the knuckles or the MCP joints. So they actually found 2 centimeters above the MCP joints. So these ones as well, these transverse digital flexion creases, they help you to again fold. As you can see, they help you to fold. If you're trying to make a fist, whatever you're trying to do, they help you to ease that folding of these digits. So those are the transverse digital flexion creases. So now finally, we have these wrist creases. We have the distal, middle, and then we have this crease here. It's actually this third wrist crease. So there are actually three: the distal, middle, and then proximal. So they are actually also important because this distal wrist crease, it actually indicates the proximal border of the flexor retinaculum, and then this proximal wrist crease, it actually indicates the radial carpal joint or the wrist joint between the distal end of the radius and the proximal carpal bones. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I hope it's my first time to make this kind of video, and it has actually been quite hard and interesting to make. So guys, I hope you found this video helpful. Okay guys, till next time, bye bye.